Midnight Story Circle. Like and subscribe for more.
Before you ever camp beside Lake Berryessa, there is something you need to know. People have reported seeing something in the deeper parts of that lake, something with the head of an alligator and the body of an eel. I used to laugh at those stories. I thought people were seeing floating logs, large fish, shadows beneath the water, anything that could be explained. Then, one night, something crawled out of the lake and stopped outside my tent. My name is Daniel, and after what happened to me at Lake Berryessa, I will never go near deep water again. This happened 3 summers ago, during the last weekend of August. My friend Marcus and I had been planning the trip for months. We both worked long hours. Neither of us had taken a real break in almost a year. We didn't want a hotel. We didn't want traffic. We just wanted 2 quiet nights of camping, fishing, and sitting beside the water. We reserved a campsite near Steel Canyon on the southern side of Lake Berryessa. We arrived late Friday afternoon. The hills around the lake were dry and golden. The air was hot, and from the road, the water looked perfectly still, like a giant sheet of glass. It was beautiful. But there was something about the lake that bothered me almost immediately. Near the shoreline, the water was green and clear. You could see the rocks beneath the surface. But 20 or 30 yards farther out, the bottom disappeared. The green became blue. The blue became darker, and then almost black. Marcus stood beside me, staring at it. Then he smiled. "Imagine what's hiding down there." I laughed. I told him not to start. Earlier that week, Marcus had sent me screenshots from a local Facebook group. People were claiming they had seen a strange animal in the lake. One fisherman said something enormous had passed beneath his boat near Pope Creek. Another described a long, snake-like body with a wide head that looked almost like an alligator. The strangest report came from a woman in a kayak. She said the creature followed her for almost 5 minutes. Whenever she paddled faster, it moved faster. When she stopped, it stopped. Then it disappeared beneath her. Most of the comments made fun of her. People said it was a giant catfish, a sturgeon, a river otter. Someone suggested that a pet alligator had been released into the lake years ago and somehow survived. Marcus thought there might actually be something unusual down there. I didn't. At least, not yet. We finished setting up our tents shortly before sunset. There were other campers nearby, but they were far enough away that we could barely hear them. As darkness settled over the lake, the temperature dropped. The wind faded. The insects became quiet. And by 10 o'clock, everything was silent. Not peaceful silent, heavy silent. The kind of silence that makes every small noise feel close. Marcus and I sat near a small lantern, talking quietly. Moonlight stretched across the water. And that was when we heard the first splash. It came from somewhere beyond the edge of our light. It wasn't the quick splash of a fish jumping. It was heavier, much heavier, like someone had dropped a large rock into the lake. Marcus stopped talking. We stared into the darkness. Then, a few seconds later, it happened again. Closer this time. Something began moving across the surface about 50 yards from shore. At first, I thought it might be a boat, but there was no engine, no voices, no navigation lights, only a long trail of ripples cutting directly through the moon's reflection. Marcus grabbed his flashlight. He aimed it toward the movement. The beam swept across the water, and the second the light touched those ripples, they stopped. Completely. We waited. Nothing moved. Nothing surfaced. Eventually, Marcus lowered the flashlight. "Probably a big fish," I said. Marcus didn't answer. We went to bed about 20 minutes later. I woke sometime after 2 in the morning. At first, I didn't know what had awakened me. Then I heard it. A slow, wet, scraping sound. It was coming from the shoreline. Like something heavy was dragging itself across the rocks. I thought Marcus might be outside moving equipment. Then I heard his voice, coming from inside his tent. "Daniel?" I sat up. "What?" "Do you hear that?" The scraping continued. Closer now. I grabbed my flashlight. My hands were shaking as I slowly unzipped the tent. Marcus stepped outside at the same time. Neither of us spoke. We pointed our lights toward the shoreline. Nothing was there. But our fishing supplies had been moved. A plastic bait container that had been sitting near the cooler was floating several feet from shore. Its lid had been torn off. Marcus walked toward the water. That was when I saw the marks. They began at the waterline and continued across the wet dirt. They weren't footprints. It looked like a wide groove had been carved through the mud, with deep marks on both sides, as if something long and heavy had pulled itself partially onto land. Marcus crouched beside the trail. Then something exhaled in the darkness. A deep, wet burst of air, directly in front of us. We jumped backward. My flashlight swung across the water, and for less than a second, I saw two reflections. Two small eyes sitting low against the surface. They were too far apart to belong to a fish, and then they vanished. We stayed awake until sunrise. When daylight finally came, the trail was still there. Marcus took several photographs. Neither of us could explain what had made it. We should have packed our things and left. I know that now. But daylight has a strange way of making everything that frightened you during the night feel ridiculous. By 8 in the morning, boats were crossing the lake. Families were swimming near the shore. Children were laughing. The fear slowly faded. We convinced ourselves that an otter had taken the bait. Maybe a large beaver. Something normal. Something that belonged there. That afternoon, we rented a small aluminum fishing boat. We planned to remain close to shore, but the fish weren't biting. Marcus suggested moving farther out, toward deeper water. I thought about the ripples from the night before. I thought about the trail in the dirt. Still, I agreed. We followed the shoreline north, past rocky points, past quiet coves. After about 30 minutes, we reached an area where the lake was almost completely empty. No swimmers, no nearby boats, only steep hills and a wide stretch of dark water. Marcus shut off the motor. The sudden silence felt wrong. The boat drifted. We cast our lines, and for 15 minutes, nothing happened. Then, something knocked against the bottom of the boat. Marcus stared at me. Did we hit something? I looked over the side. There were no rocks. The water beneath us was far too deep. Then another impact struck the boat, hard enough to shake it. Marcus reached for the motor. Before he could start it, my fishing line began to move. It wasn't being pulled away, it was moving sideways, slowly traveling from the front of the boat to the back, like something beneath us was swimming in a circle. I grabbed the rod. The line tightened. The rod bent so violently that it nearly slipped from my hands. Whatever was beneath us was strong. Marcus shouted for me to cut the line, but before I could, it went completely slack. The line floated to the surface.
The hook was gone. It hadn't come untied. The metal leader had been twisted and snapped.
Marcus pointed behind me. His face had gone completely pale. There was a shape moving beneath the water. It was longer than our boat. At first, it looked like a shadow. Then it turned. Part of its back broke through the surface. Its skin was grayish-green, smooth in some places, rough and scarred in others. There was no fin. Its body curved through the water, like a snake or an eel. Marcus pulled the starter cord. The engine turned over, but it didn't start. He pulled again. Nothing. The creature sank beneath us. The lake became still. Then something struck the boat from below. The impact lifted one side out of the water. I slammed against the bench. A second strike hit the back of the boat. Water spilled over the side. Marcus pulled the starter cord again, and again, and again. I looked over the edge. That was when I saw its head. It was only a few feet beneath the surface, wide, flattened. Its snout looked like an alligator's, but longer, narrower. Dark eyes rested on both sides of its skull, and behind the head, its body continued downward, farther than I could see. It wasn't looking past me. It was looking directly at me. Then its mouth slowly opened. Inside were rows of small, pale teeth. "Start the motor, Marcus!" The creature disappeared beneath the boat. For several seconds, all I could hear was Marcus pulling the cord. Then, the engine roared to life. Marcus pushed the throttle forward. The boat shot toward the campsite. We abandoned our fishing lines. We didn't speak. We didn't look over the sides. We only wanted to reach the shore. About halfway back, I made the mistake of looking behind us. Something was following the boat. A long wake cut through the water, matching our speed. Whenever Marcus turned, the wake turned. When he accelerated, it accelerated. It followed us until we reached an area with other boats. Then, the wake disappeared. We returned the rental without explaining what happened. We packed the campsite as quickly as possible. While Marcus loaded the truck, I checked the photographs from the previous night. Most of them showed the trail in the dirt, but the final picture was different. Marcus had taken it while standing with his back toward the lake. I enlarged the photograph. At first, I thought I was seeing another rock. Then I noticed the eyes. Something was watching him from the shoreline. Only part of its head had risen above the surface. The photograph was blurry, but the shape was unmistakable. A long snout, two dark eyes, and behind them, a thick body disappearing beneath the lake. It had been watching us before we ever got into the boat. For several weeks, neither of us told anyone. We knew how it would sound. Eventually, Marcus posted the photograph in the same local group where we had read the original stories. Most people called it fake. Some said it was a floating log. Others accused us of editing the picture. But several people sent Marcus private messages. They described seeing the same thing. One message came from an older fisherman. He said he had lived near Lake Berryessa for more than 30 years. He claimed the creature usually remained in the deepest sections of the reservoir. He said sightings became more common when the water level changed. Before ending the message, he wrote one final sentence. "You were lucky it followed the boat, instead of turning it over." Marcus deleted the post the following morning. We have never returned to Lake Berryessa. But last year, I received a message from a stranger. He had been camping there with his wife and young son. During the night, they heard something moving through their campsite. In the morning, they discovered a wide trail leading out of the lake, directly toward their tent. The man attached a photograph. The marks were identical to ours. But that wasn't what frightened me. Behind their tent, almost 20 feet from the shoreline, was a large, wet impression in the dirt, like something long and heavy had been lying there, watching them sleep. So, should you ever find yourself camping beside Lake Berryessa, you may hear people laughing about the monster supposedly living beneath the surface. They'll tell you it's a giant fish, a floating log, a shadow, or a story created to frighten tourists. Maybe they're right. But if you wake in the middle of the night and hear something dragging itself out of the water, do not leave your tent. Do not shine a flashlight toward the shoreline. And no matter how quiet the lake suddenly becomes, do not assume the sound has stopped, because the creature has gone away. Because the thing living beneath Lake Berryessa doesn't always remain beneath the water. Sometimes it comes onto the shore. And sometimes it doesn't go back.
If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another terrifying tale.